Hello and welcome to Sharon, Massachusetts. Welcome to 16 High Street, the home of Sharon Historical Society. We are a small nonprofit and we are preserving history of Sharon, and one of our missions is to educate public. Towards the end of the school year, we invite elementary schools to talk about colonial times and Deborah Sampson. In this video, I give you information shared by Mrs Arguimbau in the Carriage House or Farming Museum.
Okay, so my name is Mrs. Arguimbau. I used to teach at Heights Elementary for a long time in the gym, where Mrs. McCabe is now. Mr. V, right? Me and Mr. V, we were a pair. But in the meantime, what I did when I came home from teaching was I lived on Deborah Sampson's farm, and we still kind of farm it today. Not like full-time, heavy-duty farming like some people have to do. But anybody do any farm chores this morning when you got up? Collect eggs?
My neighbor used to have chickens.
Shovel any stalls out? No? Because if you were back in the 1800s, that's what you would do if you were getting ready to go to school. You'd have farm chores to do. Hold on a second. You'd have farm chores to do in the morning because your family would be depending on you collecting the eggs maybe, or making sure that the chickens had a clean place to stay, or that the horses were shoveled out, because everybody had their own little farm. Everybody had animals, everybody had a garden, because if you didn't have a garden, that's where you grew your food. It wasn't like you could run down to Shaw's and pick up whatever you needed, okay? Back in those days, you had to have your own way to get your own food. And everybody needed to be involved in that, from the moms and dads to the kids, especially the older kids, but even the younger kids. The chores got all split up. So, at our farm, where I live right now, my kids used to help do that. Now they're grown up and they have their own families. So, but we only have about 60 chickens, and we collect the eggs and sell the eggs. And we have one cow, whose name is Fred. You'll take Fred when you drive by. And Fred is a meat cow. He's not a milk cow. But back in the 1800s, there were lots of farms in Sharon. There were poultry. Ever heard the word poultry? Poultry means birds. So if you had a chicken farm, you were a poultry farm. If you had a turkey farm, you were a poultry farm. Up near Heights, you know where Pizza Market and all those stores are? That used to be a big turkey farm. Okay? And they sold turkeys up there, and there was another farm across the street, you know where Wallamalapog Pond is? Yeah. Not the road, but across the road there's a big pond. That was another farm area up there. And you know where the cranberries are? Yeah. Or were? Now they don't really look like cranberry bogs because they've had to gone through a change of use. It used to be cranberries, now the use is going to be sort of a wildlife refuge resource area for different birds and fish and animals like beaver, muskrat, stuff like that. So that area's changed. That's not going to be farmed anymore up there for cranberries. But hold on a second. Then at the other end of town, you know, Ward's is up by Heights. What's at the other end of town that you probably all have been to? Farm.
Very tasty stuff.
Woodsbury? Yep. On the opposite end of town. At the other end.
Nice to go in the summer.
Moo.
Long lines.
And pet the chickens.
No chickens.
Like a tasty summer treat.
Summer treat, long lines.
Ice cream.
Ice cream. Crescent Ridge! Right, that's the other farm. Crescent Ridge has been a farm for a long time. And they used to have dairy cows. Dairy cows give you milk. Beef cows give you meat, correct. So now all the cows at Crescent Ridge are beef cows. So when you see all the cows out in the pasture there, those are all beef cows. No more dairy cows because Crescent Ridge gets their milk from other farms in Vermont.
Do you use all these items to use for farming?
Not everybody wouldn't have all of them, but everybody would have some of them. Some of the farms would have, it depended what you grew. If you grew vegetables, you would have a certain amount of these. If you grew hay or grasses, you would have some of these. If you grew flowers, you might have some of these. But most of the time, most farmers had a little bit of everything, right? So you might have maybe one of each of these. Yep. This
Is the carriage?
this is an old carriage that was donated because in the olden days, this is how, like Deborah Sampson would have had one of these. Some, not like, I mean, this is kind of fancy, but one like this that she would have driven around in. Horses in the front, yep, horses would make it go. So anyway, before we leave and go to Deborah Sampson, I want to go back to farming for a second. And when you have a lot of chickens, sometimes the chickens get out. They get loose. And so instead of running around trying to catch a chicken, which is pretty hard to do, this is a chicken catcher. And what you would do is you would only have to get close enough to the chicken. Like I wouldn't, if this was my chicken right here, just make me a chicken. I wouldn't have to get right on top of her to pick her up. I could take this and I would put it out, reach to the chicken, and I would grab her leg. And the leg of the chicken would go right in here. And she couldn't fly away. So I would grab the leg and pull the bird towards me, and I could pick the bird up and put it back in the pen. So this is what's called the chicken catcher. You guys get a chance to look at this at the end. Along with animals on your farm, you had a garden. Okay? Everybody had a garden because if you didn't grow your own food, lots of times you didn't have food. Everybody had a garden. No farms, no food. It wasn't like you could run to Shaw's back then and grab whatever you wanted for supper. You had to have it in your yard. So people had pigs. What do you think they had from? What did they get from pigs? Pork and bacon. And they had chickens for eggs and for chicken meat. And they had cows for milk and for sometimes for beef. Yeah. And they had goats for
There's also goats for like goat meat.
goats for goat cheese or
And there's a special
milk.
there's a special breed of cow that helps you out with farm work.
Oxen, yes, oxen. We're going to talk about oxen in a second. So anyway, when you had your garden, those animals were for one kind of food. Your garden was for another kind of food. Vegetables, fruits, and this little item would come in handy when you were planting your garden. Not a big garden like yours garden, but an individual garden that you would have at your own house. It's called a dibble. And you poke the hole in your garden, take it out, and you can put a seed in it. Or, you know how some people grow the seeds until they get a little bit taller, then they put them in the garden? Seedlings, they're called. You can put the seedling in the hole, or you can put the seed. But that's what you would do. You would stick it, make a hole in the garden, and then put your seed in there. A dibble. That's called a dibble. Another tool that you would have, not a big one like on a big farm, but for individual farms, is this. Okay? This is mostly for cutting grass.
It's a weed whacker.
An old-fashioned weed whacker. Right. Sickle.
That's a sickle, but it's like a good for reapers.
Rhymes with pickle. Yeah, sickle. And this you would do only to cut tall grasses or weeds. If you had weeds in your yard, chop, 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 you cut them. And it has a very sharp edge. This especially has a very sharp edge because people have been using, what do you think this might be?
A rock.
Not a rock. Something for what?
Sharpening.
Sharpening. And kids have been, doing a couple of little holes on it. So this now is pretty sharp. So when you come up to look at things, touch the handle. Do not touch the blade. Okay? And sickle is a small version of a scythe. See that big curved blade right there that has a straight edge to it? That is a scythe. That's what you would use if you were cutting hay or if you had big, for the what? Reapers, yeah. And the blade above it that has the jagged edge, that is a saw, two-person wood saw.
I've seen
right?
that a lot.
Cross cut because
We talked about
you would good because you would go out with your friends to the woods, cut a tree down. Friends stand on one side, you stand on the other side, and you would pull the jagged teeth side against the tree. The straight side would not be the cutting side. Okay, you would pull the teeth side against the tree back and forth, and you would have to work as a pair to make the saw work. Because if you were both pulling apart this way, it's not going to cut. So one person goes, two people had to go this kind of motion to make the saw work. That would be something that you would have if you were cutting big trees. It would not be first. But right now, I want you to focus on what's on the walls. Because all the tools that are on the walls are tools that people would use at their smaller farms. Not the big farms, smaller farms. Everybody would have, they may not have every single one of them, but they would have a lot of them. A lot of these tools would be at everybody's farm.
Yeah. styrofoam in it? Is it for ice?
Yes, that's the next thing we're going to get into. This is Jenna, you see over there. This was her idea, to be able to show you the piece of equipment that people would use to pick up an ice block. And this is the sled that they would load all the ice blocks on from, where do you think they got the ice?
The Great Hog. The Great Hog.
Or the Nice Hog, right
They
here.
also did one thing. They started digging holes for the water to come out and make
Yes,
more ice.
right. And there's a little display out there in the driveway. On your way out, you can take a look about how the ice thing happened, how they harvested the ice. But they would put all the ice blocks on this. These saws on the ground are the ice saws that they would use to actually saw the ice, like they use in the pictures. And that's what you call ice tongs. You open them up and the ice comes out, you close them together and you hold the ice and you can pick it up. Those are ice tongs, okay? And there's lots of other things here that I'm going to give you a chance to go walk around and take a look at. This is what they call a sifter. You could use this for a couple of things. You could use it at the cranberry bogs. If you put all your cranberries in here, you would shake the cranberries back and forth, and all of the leaves and stems would fall out, and the berries would be left in here. You could also use it if you were in a garden, you were trying to make a garden, and the soil that you were working with was very rocky. You would put the soil in here, shake it, and all the soft, tiny pieces of dirt would come out, and all the rocks that you didn't want in your garden would stay in here. So this is what they call a sifter, okay? Question?
I live near a cranberry bog.
You live in the cranberry bogs? Yeah, that's got kind of a height section of town, is up near the cranberry bogs.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What's that old thing under the thing that looks like a double fishing?
These wheels you're talking about?
No. Can I stand up and show it?
This little thing right here?
Yeah.
That is that would help you if you had an orchard. Do you know what you grow in orchards? What do you grow in orchards?
Apples.
Apples? Anything else?
Apples and
Pears?
bananas.
Peaches? Not bananas? Maybe bananas? I don't know if they call that an orchard or not. But that is a fruit picker. So you would take that and you would pick it and push it up into the tree and put those little wire fingers around the piece of fruit and pull it back down. And it would cushion the fruit so the fruit would fall all the way to the ground and hit the ground. The other thing I want to talk about, we did the ice, we did the cranberries, and we did, there were so many other farms in Sharon that are not here now. But this wagon came from Moose Hill Farm. Do you know where that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, where Moose Hill, right?
Wait, there's a bunch of mooses.
There's an Audubon Sanctuary, but there's also what's called the Trustee, who's a reservation. They have a little nursery school up there. This came from the family that lived up there, the Kendalls. And they had this wagon that they would take to go from Moose Hill to the center of town. They would drive it from Moose Hill to the center of town, so they donated it to the Historical Society so that it can be kept and people can take a look at it. We ask that you don't climb on it and that you don't do it too, don't touch it too much because it is an older thing. But it's original and it's really a good example of what a nice, this was a fancier wagon because how many people do you think could fit in here? Four. This is a 4-person wagon. Most of the wagons people had were 2 people, just for 2, side by side.
It's a fancy wagon. I'm not trying to
This right here?
It must look a bit.
These big stones do what this little stone does, except they do it for bigger pieces of equipment. This would be like for a jackknife, for a sickle, for a kitchen knife. If you, the lady that was cooking or the guy that was cooking dinner wanted to sharpen their knife.
I usually
Right.
use rocks to do that.
These turn, and if you had like a shovel or one of those long blades, you would use this to make this stone make the blade sharp. Okay?
I usually use rocks.
Or you can use rocks.
People
sometimes,
use
but-
that to make pottery.
So when Deborah Sampson was farming, because that's where she lived, was a farm. She lived at that house in her older years. She was not a young girl when she lived in that house, okay? So when she lived there, her son and her grandkids did most of the farming, but she was on that farm, and the farm is almost the same size right now as it was when Deborah was there. It's a little different shape now, but it's almost the same size. The barn is the same. When you see the barn, when you see the long shed that's in the field, if you drive by, that was not there when Deborah was there, but the big barn was. Yeah.
So why is this shape
Because some people in Deborah's family gave some land to somebody else, But then the next family that got it bought some other land to add to it. So the number is about equal, but the shape is different because part of the land came out of it. Okay, but what's right around the house is the exact same as it was when Deborah was there. And when Deborah was there, you could see there was no woods because it was all farmland. So there were no trees. You just looked out and it was clear view. It was very different because everybody farmed. Everybody farmed, and now most people don't have to farm because big farms do it for us. But luckily, we have woods.
And at this point, the students had opportunity to explore our little farming museum. I would like to thank to Peg for subbing for her husband, the real farmer Dan. And she did fantastic job. Thank you so much. And you are all welcome to visit our museum at 16 High Street anytime during our open hours, or you can make special appointment. Thank you for watching Sharon Local History.